Get started. Good to see this big group here tonight. A lot of people like BAUXITE. I think you can show BAUXITE anywhere and people show up. I'm Steve Perdue, those of you who know me, and I'm president of Saline County History and Heritage Society. And we'd like to welcome you to our, this is our Archives and Family Research Room. And we're always looking for new members. So if you're interested in joining the society, it's $25 a year, and you get 2 quarterlies. You get almost 160 pages of Saline County history. And there is an article in the one that's coming out this year, I think it's end of September. There's a little bit about First Baptist BAUXITE in there. But I haven't finished all this until then, so it's not all in there. But Joy's taping it tonight, and it'll be on ycattv, so you can look at it. And yes, sir.
Steve, there'll be copies up here for people to check out once they come up here.
Okay, good.
We'll give you extra copies.
We appreciate that. And I just about to say, let's have a word of prayer. So, you might need yeah, but we'll go ahead and get started now. And it's hard to find photographs of BAUXITE now. They're just not out there. If any of you have any old photographs of the church or when you were attending there, please look through all your pictures and see if you find any. Because the more that you can find, the more I can add to this presentation. I had some of them, and I looked through all the pictures I could find, and I never did find them. So I know, well, I'll get into that later. But anyway, let's get started with this, and here we go. Early reports of the beginning of what became the First Baptist Church BAUXITE began around 1900. As more miners showed up in what was called Perry Smith, Arkansas, where the deposits of bauxite had only recently been discovered and were found useful in production of aluminum. This picture shows what the village of BAUXITE looked like in 1905, and the reason I'm showing this is because it's got a lot of the people that were the early founders of the church. It mentions right here, it says, we dug into the archives, this was in the pick and shovel, and found a picture of the town of BAUXITE about 1905. The house and store were located on what is known now as Pine Street, and is one short block from the present Rock Island Railway Station, the old depot. J.W. Smith bought this store from Gus Graham. I'm going to show you a picture of the Graham store. And somebody help Jamie in. J.W. Smith bought this store from Gus Graham in 1904 with no anticipation this village was to grow and become nationally famous as the source of domestic bauxite. Where this store once stood is mined out bauxite pit. The person at the extreme left, right here, is Mrs. H.N. Sanges and a bauxite. Moving right, you have Tommy Gray, Grace Dottam, who is now Mrs. Tommy Gray, Clara Emery, Mrs. J.W. Smith, Mrs. W.R. Donham, I think they're missing some there, Smith Donham, John Emery, Blanche Donham, and this is J.W. Smith right here. He's the father of James Lafayette Smith, or Fate Smith, they used to call him. And this is W.R. Emery standing up here on the porch of the building. And in 1902, the Perry Smith Baptist Church petitioned the Pine Bluff Association to become a member. Reverend Joshua Halbert was listed as the first pastor of the church. In 1903 and 1904, there was no report listed from the Perry Smith Baptist Church, but it was listed as a member of the churches in the association. In 1905, 1906, and 1907, it was not listed as a church in the association. In 1908, the Perry Smith Church was listed, but it had no report, but it did send messengers. Messengers to the associational meeting were J.W. Smith and Mr. W.R. Perkins. Now, J.W. Smith owned the store north of Bauxite Depot from the summer of 1904 until 1916, when he sold it to Hill and Ramsey. Mr. Smith was the father of J.L. Fate Smith of Bryan, and longtime member of First Baptist Church Bauxite. Somebody may remember him wearing the green glasses. Mr. Fate Smith did. And grandfather, Mrs. H.N. Sandhughes. In 1909 and 1910, 1911, there was no report from the Pine Bluff Association, but the church was listed as a member. There was Graham's store located where the Baptist church was later moved. The church swapped its property and partly built church for the store and made it into a church in 1911. And this was the corner of Pine and later called Church Street. The old church was deeded to the school district, and the 6-room brick school was built there in 1911. And this comes from Ola Claiborne Pitton and her Memories of Bauxite. Here's the way that the first church looked like, and it was behind the little red school building. And notice it had a steeple on it. And this one is going to be later swapped to the school district in exchange for property across the street from the little red school building. And here you can see them all kind of lined up. Here's the church. This is after 1911 because there's the little red school building built. And then here's the store. I think this is the Graham Brothers store. I was thinking it needed to be turned around the other way, but if you look at it, the way it looks like that. Because this is on this side, and this was on the left side of the street, and this was on the right side of the street if you're looking. But this is the petition letter from petitionary letters were called upon, and Perry Smith Church, it was accepted into the Fellowship of Pine Bluff, later Pine Bluff Missionary Baptist Association. And here is a list of all the churches, the county they were in, the names of the messengers, the pastors, and the clerk, church clerk. And here you can see Perry Smith is located right here, and W.R. Childress, Walter Brown, I think it is, and Will Rucker were the messengers, and Joshua Halbert was the pastor. And W.R. Childress was the church clerk. Joshua Halbert was the pastor here at Bauxite, but notice up here at Bryan, he's also the pastor over Bryan. So many churches didn't have preaching every Sunday, every month. And later on we'll see where Bauxite had it on the, I think it's the first and third Sunday, and then so Bryan might have had it on the second and fourth Sunday. So that way he could go to both churches and cover both churches. But that's the minutes. Now here's Joshua Halbert. He was an old-time preacher, and he was the first pastor of Bauxite, Perry Smith Baptist Church. It's still called Perry Smith at this time. And he was real active in all the Baptist churches in Saline County and Grant County and all this area. And a while ago I was showing Perry Smith right underneath it was Palestine, and had Palestine Church, was a member of that Pine Bluff Association too. And Sherry said he might have been pastor at New Friendship or something like that. Now here's the Graham Brothers store, and this is the one that we think this was where the lot was, and this would be the street out here. The school's going to be over here on this side, and then the old church would be further down, and then this is where they built the church. And In 1912, the Perry Smith Baptist Church was listed in the Pine Bluff Association minutes. The pastor was Reverend E.J.A. McKinney. The church had 1 baptism for the year and 16 by letter. The membership of the church was 26. Mr. J.L. Smith was the church clerk. 1913, the church was listed as Perry Smith Baptist Church with BAUXITE in parentheses. The church had 16 baptisms and 14 by letter with a total of 60 members. The pastor was paid $159 a year. In 1914, the name Perry Smith is not listed in the Pine Bluff minutes and it's just called BAUXITE Baptist Church. Reverend H.W. Perkins was a minister living in BAUXITE and could have been the pastor, but it didn't tell. In 1915, there was no report. In 1916, the church was called BAUXITE, and the messengers were J.N. Poe, T.M. Sharp, and Mrs. T.M. Sharp, and Reverend A.L. Brumelow was the pastor in 1916 and was paid $167.10 a year. The church had 96 members, and in 1917, J.N. Poe, A.L. Brumelow, and J.L. Smith were messengers to the associational meeting. The Sunday school was using Southern Baptist Convention literature in 1917 instead of landmark literature, and it had all the churches listed in the Pine Bluff Association, and only BAUXITE and Pleasant Hill were using convention literature. All the rest were using landmark literature. This is in 1917. Here's another picture now. Here's the school. You can see they still have the steeple back there on the old church. And this, in some reports, this became the high school later, before they built the one up in 36 up on the hill. So the old church became the high school, and here you can see in this picture they've taken the steeple off of it, so it's probably school district property now, and for sure. And the First Baptist Church now is our first Perry Smith Church is over here. We're going to call it the BAUXITE Baptist Church after 1916 because they took away the name Perry Smith. All right, and this is Pine going that way, and this is Church Street right here. All right. In 1918, the pastor was Reverend C.F. Medlin, and there were 108 members of the church. In 1919, at the urging of the First Baptist Church of Benton, the Central Baptist Association was formed on October the 29th, 1919. In 1920, though there are no records for the church, in June 1920, BAUXITE News on page 20, published by the Republic Mining and Manufacturing Company, it stated that Reverend W.M. Roe Kelly was the pastor at the Baptist Church, and that preaching was held every first and third Sunday. That's in 1920. In September 1920, BAUXITE News, it was mentioned that Reverend William Monroe Kelly had resigned as pastor on page 17. Reverend, just a side note, Reverend Kelly had served as pastor of First Baptist Church Benton from 1905 to 1910 and from 1916 to 1918. In November 1920, the BAUXITE News, it stated that Reverend James Lafayette Brown, had become pastor of the BAUXITE Baptist Church. In 1921, the BAUXITE Baptist Church was listed as a member in the Central Association, so it is now part of the Central Baptist Association. It left the Pine Bluff, which later they changed the name to Pine Bluff Missionary Baptist Association. And Reverend W.T. King was listed as pastor. And there's a list of the pastors then that I've been able to find from 1902 down to 1922. And Reverend W.T. King was listed as pastor in 1921. The church built a new building in 1922. Now, I guess they got out of the store building, is what I'm thinking. Don't have any proof. Reverend W.T. King was pastor of the church when the new building was built. The building committee, again, was composed of J.L. Fate Smith, W.R. Emery, and the Alcoa Company doctor, Dr. E.A. Buckley. And here's the cornerstone of that church, built in 1922. And there you see the building committee. And this is slide. This is Reverend W.T. King. This is Reverend W.T. King in 1948. So it's 26 years what he looked like after 1922 when he helped build the church. He was pastor of BAUXITE Baptist Church when the new church was built. And he was involved with, I think, the Arkansas Baptist State Convention in building churches. He was building churches all over the state of Arkansas. And in his obituary, it said he built 23 churches during his ministry. He died in 1950. But he was pastor here in 1920 and 22. And, 1921 to 22. In 23 to 25, the pastor was Reverend M.A. Treadwell. The membership was 140 in 1923, but rose to 239 in 1924. And in 1925, the membership was 250. The pastor was being paid $1,800 a year. Then the records skip over until 1926, when we find that the church had a membership of, it jumped from, in 1925, the membership was 250. And in 26, I don't know if they made a mistake or not, but it's what it said in the record. Their membership was 348 for the, maybe since they're in the new building too. And for the year, the church had 65 baptisms, 39 by letter to join the church. Here's a picture of Garland Pinnell back in the late 1990s when he had saved the original cornerstone of that 1922 church. And he donated it to the BAUXITE Museum, and it's over there at the BAUXITE Museum now. And there's the church, what it looked like in the 1922 for a while. Again, in 1926, Reverend H.A. Vickers became pastor. And Mr. J.L. Fate Smith again was the Sunday school director, and Mrs. W.R. Emery was the director of the Women's Missionary Society. And in 1927, Reverend Vickers was still pastor. And here's a 1923 picture of the church. You see the Chickasha Flats over here next to it. And across the street now is that red schoolhouse that we were looking at a while ago. All right. This is a good picture because it shows the church up here at the top of Pine Street. And there's, I think that's the old church over there. And of course the real red schoolhouse is on the other side of that church. Here's the Chickasha Flats. So this is 1923 picture. And going up to the top of the hill. Notice the streets weren't paved back then. And see the old cars there parked in the driveway. All right. In 1927, the Sunday School Board of the Southern Baptist Convention gave this certificate to the Fidelis Sunday School class at First Baptist Church, BAUXITE. And here's Reverend Baxter that followed Brother Vickers in 1927. And he didn't stay but a year. I don't know if he looks kind of mad. So maybe that's why he didn't stay but a year there as pastor. But that's Roger Baxter. And the clerk was Mrs. J.E. Forsey. Treasurer was W.R. Emery. The church had a membership of 350 and 28. The Sunday school had an average attendance of 225. Baptist Young People's Union had attendance of 61. The church had 7 baptisms for the year and 3 by letter. And then Reverend, something's going on in the church at this time because Vickers was there for 2 of those years and he left. Baxter came, and then he leaves after a year, and then Brother Vickers comes back. So in 1929, Reverend H.A. Vickers is back, and he serves as pastor until 1934. So he serves a long time. In 1934, Brother Vickers was still pastor. Now this is coming out of the Depression. He was making a salary of $975 a year. This is when times were still tough around. The church clerk was Mr. Ross McDonald in 1929. And, I'm sorry, we're up to 34. Sunday school superintendent was Mr. T.F. Hand. In 34, there had been 64 baptisms, and the Sunday school had an average attendance of 279. BYPU had 81 in average attendance. So, that's Baptist Young People's Union. And here's the ladies' Sunday school class in the 1920s. And is this Mona here, Jamie? Right, next row? Okay, I can't hear you right in that area. But here you see the names, and some of them are cut off. But this picture's over in the BAUXITE Museum. But this is Sunday morning. You see the church with the two doors still, what they're worshiping in. And that's a pretty big women's class. This is in the 20s. This is not 34. I don't think. Another picture of it. You can tell the dress it's in the 20s. In 1935, the pastor was Reverend Joe B. Sullivan. Church clerk was Ross McDonald. Now, Ross is county treasurer and county sheriff during this time. That's Lee County. Sunday school superintendent was T.F. Hand. Women's Missionary Society was, again, Mrs. W.R. Emery. Baptist Training Union was Mr. Lonnie Sweeten. The church had 45 baptisms for the year in 1935. Don't have a report for 36. 37, the pastor was Reverend Joe B. Sullivan again. His salary for the year was $1,443.82 a year. The church had a membership of 482. The Sunday school averaged 284. BYPU averaged 92. And the church had 27 baptisms for the year, 1937. In 38, the pastor again was Joe Sullivan, and the church clerk was L.E. Sweet. Treasurer was Ernest Callison. Mr. Ross McDonald, Sunday school superintendent, and the church had a membership of 505. The Sunday school average of 259. Baptist Young People's Union had an average attendance of 124. In 1939, the pastor was still Reverend Joe B. Sullivan. This is Sunday, September the 6th, 1936, and they're starting a bulletin, and this may be the first bulletin that the church had, I'm not sure. This is in the BAUXITE Museum. But you can see here, he's thanking Dr. E.A. Buckley, W.R. Emery, and J.L. Smith, trustees of the BAUXITE Baptist Church. And if you've been to the BAUXITE Museum, you know what this is called. The Baptist Minor. So that was the name of the church bulletin. And there you see all the church officers listed there. And has the deacons listed here. And Mr. Smith, Faith Smith, was the chairman of the deacons. All right. In 38, we still have Joe Sullivan. In 39, the pastor was Joe Sullivan. He leaves at the end of 39. And notice that the church has kind of changed now during this time. It's got the openings are closed up, and I don't know if this was an addition that was built on. I couldn't find anything about that. The minutes that are left start in 43. And I was getting a lot of this from associational records. But notice the church has changed and has added that front to it. And in there's another picture. And in 1940, the pastor was Reverend Ralph W. Davis. Sunday school superintendent again was Ross McDonald. Treasurer, Mr. E.M. Callison. Church clerk was Roy Brown. Baptist Training Union director was J.H. Barlow. The Women's Missionary Union director was my grandmother, Mrs. Jack Hope. And Brother Davis did not stay very long. He stayed about a year. And he later becomes official at the Arkansas Baptist State Convention for many years. Ralph Davis was, I think, in charge of the training union department at the Arkansas Baptist State Convention. And then I couldn't find a picture of Elmo Johnson. If anybody's got a picture of Elmo Johnson, let me know. I've looked. In 41, beginning World War II, he becomes the pastor. Church membership was 457. 18 families were receiving the Arkansas Baptist. There were 20 baptisms and 6 by letter. The pastor was receiving a salary of $2,087.13 a year. In 1942, church membership was 546. Reverend Elmo Johnson was pastor. There were 62 baptisms and 28 joined the letter. The pastor was receiving a salary, this is 42, this is what it said, $3,540.12 a year. There were 424 enrolled in Sunday school, and average attendance was 193 a Sunday. 117 were enrolled in Women's Missionary Union. Vacation Bible School had 110 enrolled. Here's a young men's class in the 1940s. That's Mr. Terrell. I'm assuming he was M.T. Terrell, who was superintendent of BAUXITE schools, was probably one of the teachers. And here's Ross McDonald over here. And I'm not sure about some of these. I think they've got the names over at the BAUXITE Museum if you want to check who all these people are. In 43, the church had a membership that climbed to 600. Remember, we're in the middle of war now, so there are 28 baptisms and 52 joined the letter. 36 families received the Arkansas Baptist newspaper. The pastor received a salary of $3,000 a year. The church began a building campaign to build a new auditorium and a basement. The chairman of the building committee was Mr. L.E. Sweeten. The budget for the new auditorium was $10,000. The church auditorium would hold 420 seating capacity. The average Sunday school attendance in 1943 was 323. Reverend Elmo Johnson, resigned on September the 3rd, 1944. And the church was without a pastor in October of 44 when they reported their minutes. On October the 10th, 1944, Mrs. Callison made a motion to move the kitchen into the new basement. On October 29th, 1944, Reverend Henry Rutledge was called as pastor. A World War II service honor roll was to be put up in the church, honoring the veterans of the church who were serving in the war. Some of you, if you remember that, as you walked up the steps to go into the auditorium, it was over there on the wall. In 1946, the church had a membership of 645, and the church had 32 baptisms and 33 by letter. Sunday school enrollment was 569 with an average attendance of 266. Here is a picture that appeared in the Pick and Shovel after the new church had been built. And it says that they had a membership more than 500. It says it was founded in the year 1900. The original building was erected on a plot of land deeded to the denomination by the Perry Smith Bauxite Company in 1902. The plot and the building were traded for a store operated on the site of the present church structure. The store was remodeled, served the congregation till the spring of 43, when an extensive reconstruction program was begun. Most of the old wooden structure had been replaced by tile brick construction above a new basement that contains an auditorium 70 feet long by 48 feet wide the program of improvements is still in progress. So this is in the 1940s. The Reverend Rutledge, the church had 46, lost my place. Sunday school enrollment was 569 with an average attendance of 266. On October 1st, 1946, Reverend Henry Rutledge submitted his resignation. On December the 4th, 1946, the church extended a call to Reverend Roger A. Butler. In 1947, the church had a membership of 664. Here's Roger Butler. The Sunday school superintendent was Ross McDonald. The Sunday school enrollment was 571, and average attendance was 307. Training union director was Mr. H.W. Applegate. There were 206 enrolled in training union, and average attendance of 105. Reverend Butler received a salary of $2,885, and church gifts totaled $12,000. And my mother and father joined in November of 47. And this is a meeting, I think it says October of 48, of the Central Baptist Association met there at the First Baptist Church, and out on the steps of the church, you can see the steps here a little bit better, and double doors going up. There were steps inside that went up. And they're recognizing 3 new churches that have joined the Central Baptist Association. The Mill Creek Church, Gum Springs Church, and Memorial Church in Hot Springs, and these were the messengers from that. And I think that's 48. And Reverend Roger Butler received a salary of $3,770 a year. Choir director was Mrs. R.A. Butler. There were 60 baptisms and 29 by letter. There were 718 members of the church. Sunday school had a membership of 670. With an average attendance of 353. Treasurer was Mr. M.T. Terrell, superintendent of BAUXITE Public Schools. In 1949, there were 783 members of First Baptist Church. 71 baptisms and 34 had joined by letter. Church clerk was Woodrow Bell, and Sunday school superintendent was Ross McDonald. And in 1950, there were 782 members of the church, and there were 42 baptisms, 15 joined by letter. October the 15th, 1950, Reverend Roger Butler resigns. This is a bulletin that was published while Roger Butler was, and they're not calling it the Baptist Minor anymore, doesn't look like it. This is First Baptist Church, Roger Butler, pastor, and these are the list of the people that have been baptized. And if you look at some of these streets, now this is over at the BAUXITE Museum. You got Holly Street, you got Roosevelt, you got Hickory, you got Pine, you got Granite Street, and this is when Pine Haven was going strong, and you see how the church was prospering. Let's see, here's the choir in 1948-49. And I didn't put the one with the picture with the list. I think that's in that BAUXITE book. It's got all the names, does it? Or they have it over the top. I'm looking at Jamie back there. She's provided that picture. But there's the church, and then just got new choir robes, I think, and that was the new choir robes. And you see some of those. I think that's Mr. Prince, and that's Paul Ramsey there. There's Mr. Bishop, Ralph Bishop, and I can't see very good. That's Mr. Butler, I think, right there. Here's, I think, Carlin Edmondson. There's John Reed. Here's Margie Fry. I think Graham. I think this is Pauline Bethel. I think there's Lee Burns, Toe, and Miss Graham. I think this is Burnell Ramsey right here. And that's inside the church. They're in the choir loft. And On January the 15th, 1951, Reverend Boyd E. Eldridge was invited to preach in review of a call of the church. On January 17th, 1951, Reverend Eldridge was called as pastor. He told the church he could not be on the church field until March 4th, 1951. He came from First Baptist Church, Tyronza, Arkansas. And the church had 728 members and had 28 baptisms, 16 by 11. Mr. H.W. Applegate was Sunday school superintendent, and there were 550 members in Sunday school with an average attendance of 277. In 52, the church had 794 members. This was the largest membership of the church, First Baptist Church ever, almost 800 members. There were 50 baptisms and 63 by 11. The Vacation Bible School had 222 enrollment. And here's the list of pastors from 23 up to 53 when Boyd Eldridge retires. Of course, I had put in here in 1953, on May 7th, Eddie Perdue, Henry Hart, Woodrow Bell were selected as deacons. And on September the 6th, 1953, Reverend Eldridge resigned as pastor. There were 784 members. There had been 20 baptisms in 1953 and 26 by 11. Fred Davis was Sunday school superintendent, and there were 440 enrolled in Sunday school with an average attendance of 281. In November of 1953, the church called Reverend Dillard S. Miller as pastor. I forgot to tell about the bus ministry. This was the bus ministry started, I think, maybe with Butler, and it was going on with Brother Eldridge. And you see the church out here. And they went all over the county, I think, picking up people. This is John Crowson, Henry Hart, Fred Davis. This is Reverend Eldridge, Pete Gould, and I don't know who these two. Does anybody know those last two? Okay, I don't know them. I think this might be Kenneth Peterson. I'm not sure. It kind of looks like. But anyway, this was the church ministry, church bus ministry, and they had. And they're busing a lot of kids. You see that bus is full. I don't know how many runs they made. So in 1954, there were 765 members of First Baptist Church. There were 27 baptisms, 23 by 11. This was also probably when Brother Eldridge was still pastor. This is a girls' auxiliary. The WMU sponsored the Girls Auxiliary, and every year they had induction of queen regents, and they always had little boys that carried the crowns, and the girls carried the flowers. That's Lynn Hart. I think that's Stevie Huggins, and this is George Jaggers over here. And if I start naming names, I'm going to miss somebody. But if you see yourself up there, I think, well, I'm not going to worry about that. Mrs. Daggett was the WMU director then. And I'll leave that up there. Here are the queens. I don't know if there's, I think this is Helen Reed right here. I think that's Christine Huggins right there. All right. In 55, there were 778 members. Reverend Miller was receiving a salary of $5,160 a year. And here's another one now. This is in 1952 when Brother Eldridge was still pastor. Here you see the list of the people. And here's Joe Watley, Joe Burns. Here's Jackie English. Did I see him come in? Yeah, there he is. And this is Gene Dow. And you see the rest of them. We may have got some of those mixed up, I'm not sure. Bill and Bob Lewis, they were Baptists then, that's where they went Methodist. Yeah, Steve Cruz up there too. In 1956, there were 724 members. Reverend Miller submitted his resignation on March the 6th, 1956. Brother Miller resigned to take the pastorship of the First Baptist Church, Mena. His wife Nellie and daughter Carla and son Rod were well liked by the whole congregation. And here's his picture that appeared in the Pick and Show. This is Dillard S. Miller. He never did pastor in another church after he left. He stayed at First Baptist Mena until his death, even after he was not pastoring there. I put this in because it did connect. They were having a revival at First Baptist Church, and this is our living room. And we're having a cottage prayer meeting. You remember those? And this is Christine Huggins, Wallace Floyd, Mary Floyd, Steve Huggins. There I am. This is Miss Bass, Mary Bass. Her husband was the football coach. There's my mother. This is John Reed. That's my dad. That's inside the house. And that's about 1956. Getting ready for a revival. They don't do that much anymore. And here's the church now in 1954 that most of you remember probably. And the sign says Reverend Dillard S. Miller, pastor. So this is when Brother Miller was pastor of the church. And I said the other night on Facebook, I think that's John Reed's Dodge. Let me go back. I think that's John Reed's Dodge right there, the soda or whatever it's called. And on July the 4th, here's another, Helen Reed was, I think, Queen Regent, I think that's what it's called. And you can see different ones here that are members. Here's Brother Miller, here's Miss Miller, and there's my dad, there's Woodrow Bell, Miss Bell, Christine Huggins, Dorothy Hart, Miss Miller, my mother, John Reed, Freddie Spann, and a bunch of others in here. Let's see. And I may have some on the later one. I did the later one, and I think I missed it up. But here's another picture of him, Brother Miller, telling about him coming in the Pick and Show. And is this sign still there? Across from where the Methodist church is. And they were directing people to go to the Baptist church. Figure that one out. Okay. Now this is in that basement. And we had a lot of potlucks down there. And this picture's good because it shows what the basement looked like. And this, I know, this is Jesse Liverpool. And Betty, is that you? Betty? Yeah, I think it is too. I think that's Betty. Raise your hand, Betty. I think that's Betty right there. And some of the rest of you may recognize yourselves. That's Miss Burns back there at the back. And I know some of you know everybody in there, but I don't have time to do all that.
Mary, were you there?
I had a hard time finding this picture. This is in July 4th, 1956, the church voted to call Reverend Phil J. Beach as pastor. The church had 724 members. The Sunday school superintendent was Fred Davis, and there were 418 enrolled in Sunday school, an average attendance of 245. And in 1957, the church had a membership of 630. The Sunday school had 370 enrolled, and an average attendance of 232. In 1958, Reverend Phil Beach began to speak to the future of the church and the Midway community. They were tearing down Pine Haven. Pine Haven was gone. And they were starting to tear down other areas of the town. They decided to purchase some property in the Midway community. The church paid, Reverend Beach's salary was $5,400 a year. The church had a membership of 657. And on May the 6, 1958, the church voted to purchase the Palmer property on the Benton Bauxite Highway for a mission to be built. Work began on the Midway Baptist Mission. Now, this is several pictures of the same. Again, we have another Queen Regent. I think that's Margaret Ramsey there. That was Queen Regent. I think Marion's in this one, aren't you?
Hey, you're getting close.
I think she is.
Don't think I'm that old.
And here you see the names listed right here. Janie's in this one.
What
I don't
year
think
is that?
this.
Same?
I think it's around 57, 58. I'm guessing. Miss Gould's in here, right there. Notice they've covered up the baptistry with this green curtain, this real dark green velvet curtain. And when they had baptisms, they'd pull the curtain open and the preacher would stand up there and baptize people in the baptistry. On April the 15th, 1959, Reverend Phil J. Beach resigned in order to become pastor of the Third Baptist Church in Malvern. On May the 31st, 1959, the church called Reverend Eddie McCord from Mount Ida First Baptist Church to become pastor of the First Baptist Church, BAUXITE. The church paid him $4,800 a year. The church had 636 members. Fred Davis was Sunday school superintendent. The Sunday school had an enrollment of 242 and an average attendance of 179. Many church members who lived in the area of Midway Baptist Mission began to move to the mission. Mr. Gene Taylor was music director of the church. On October the 7th, 1959, the Midway Baptist Mission began. The town of BAUXITE was slowly being torn down by Alcoa. Pine Haven was the first to go, then the area around Center Street, Sand Hill. Many in the church felt that the Midway Mission could be a place where the church could move to. Many did not feel that way and wanted First Baptist Church BAUXITE to remain. Now here's several pictures of this same picture here. And when Brother Beach was pastor, they did some landscaping out in front. I think these are called arborvitaes. They put those in there. And you see they still have the church bus. And that's when he moved to the lady over at Third Baptist Malvern sent me that picture. And then here's Brother McCord. And Brother McCord was preaching at both places, the Midway Baptist Mission, and he was also preaching at the First Baptist Church, BAUXITE. He would preach at the mission, then he would come back to BAUXITE, the main church, and preach a second message. All who joined either the mission or the main church were members of First Baptist Church, BAUXITE. There was a great deal of discussion going on in the church during this time, with some wanting to move the church to the mission, others wanting the First Baptist Church to stay in BAUXITE. Finally, after a lot of discussion, the deacons held a meeting with the pastor on July the 10th, 1960. The deacons made a unanimous recommendation that the church look with favor for the mission organizing, if they so desire, into a church, with the favor of the First Baptist Church BAUXITE's blessing. The church voted unanimously in favor of this motion. The pastor appointed a steering committee to work out the details concerning the transfer of furniture, finances, and related business. Mr. K.W. McDonald was chairman, Ernest Martin, Steve Huggins, and Oriam Fry were the members of the committee. This was unanimously adopted by the church by a show of hands. This was done on July the 13th, 1960. On July the 17th, 1960, Reverend McCord resigned as pastor of First Baptist Church, Bauxite, effective August 6, 1960, and the church voted to accept his resignation. On July the 24th, 1960, the Midway Baptist Mission became Trinity Baptist Church. Reverend McCord, who had resigned as pastor at Bauxite on August 6, 1960, was then called as the pastor of the new Trinity Baptist Church. Around 210 members left First Baptist Church Bauxite to become charter members of Trinity Baptist Church. On November the 30th, 1960, the First Baptist Church in Bauxite, and here's a picture taken around 1964, I think it was. But put this in here because you can see how the church went back here. Here's the basement, and here's the Sunday school rooms that were back here at the back. But this is the part they added in the 40s. The pastor appointed, well, where was it? On November the 30th, the First Baptist Church in Bauxite called Reverend F.M. Robinson. That's another picture. Reverend F.M. Robinson to become their pastor. He accepted the call in January of 1961. The church had 429 members, but more members were leaving the church. Sunday school had an enrollment of 85. Reverend Robinson's salary was $4,800 a year. And in 1962, the Sunday school enrollment was 84 with 62 average attendance. In 1963, there were 73 enrolled in Sunday school with 52 as an average attendance. In 64, there were 2 baptisms and 6 who joined the letter. Sunday school enrollment was 78 with an average attendance of 48. In 1965, there were 78 enrolled in Sunday school with 52 average attendance. More houses were being moved out or being torn down. Reverend Robinson resigned in 1965. Here's a picture in 66. Now this appeared in the New York Times about the demise of Bauxite the company-owned towns being phased out. And the company sent a letter out to all the people that were still living in the town of Bauxite. And in 1966, Reverend Gordon Scott Backus, who was teaching history at the Bauxite High School, became the pastor. There were 2 baptisms and 3 by letter. The Sunday school had 71 enrolled with 51 in attendance. In 1967, Reverend Backus was still pastor. There was 1 baptism, 5 joined the latter. His salary is $5,100 a year. The Sunday school had an enrollment of 96 with an average attendance of 62. The 27 families of the town received notification on June 19, 1967 from J.W. Wells, manager of Alcoa's Arkansas operations, which stated that as of July 1, 1969, Bauxite, the company town, would cease to exist. Alcoa had promised that they would give a 2-year warning. In 1968, the church had 1 baptism and 10 by letter. The Sunday school had 108 enrolled and an average attendance of 62. In 1969, the Sunday school had 94 enrolled and an average attendance of 60. On April 13, 1969, the pastor and deacons met to discuss the future of the church, and a recommendation was made that the church disband in July of 1969. However, this did not take place. But in 1970, more members began to leave the church. The church struggled to stay open financially. Some of the furnishings were sold to raise funds. On April 26, 1970, Reverend Gordon Backus said that our church has fulfilled its mission. Ralph Richards made a motion that the church disband as of May 31st, 1970. And a vote was taken with 27 voting to leave the church and 8 voted to keep the church. Reverend Backus gave his resignation effective May 31st, 1970. Thank Ginger English. That's a picture of Brother Backus years later. The last business meeting took place in May of 1970. The church records were conveyed to the Central Baptist Association, and all property and furniture. Many fond memories still linger of the experiences members had in the First Baptist Church, BAUXITE. There's the motion to disband. We're not sure what the program's going to be next month. I hope y'all can come back on Thursday, and it'll be announced as good. And again, if you'd like to join the History and Heritage Society, it's $25 a year, and you get 2 publications of the Selene a year. It has about 160. Marlo Bush Kruger is the editor. She's going to be leaving. This is her last issue. We certainly appreciate all the work she's done in keeping the Selene going and doing it. And Virginia White, raise your hand, Virginia. Virginia White's has graciously taken the job of being editor of the news for the next year for the Selene. Yes. Let Patsy Coon. Okay, Kathy, come around here. Well, all right. Give us a. Kathy's president of the Bryan Historical Society, and she's got a message about something they've got coming up.
We have been very privileged to help Nancy Hendricks, who is an author and she is a historian. She's got a lot of credentials behind her, but she is doing a play. She has written a play, and it's going to be put on by the Royal Players on October 7th, 8th, and 9th. And it is about David O'Dodd. And it is about his life and his family, and she has worked very, very hard in this, and we have helped her, and we're supporting her, and we would love for all of y'all to come and support her in this endeavor, because David O'Dodd is part of our heritage here in Saline County. So we just ask that if you have a chance, come out and support the Royal Players and Nancy Hendricks.
And another announcement, the Arkansas Genealogical Society will hold its fall conference October the 14th and 15th at the Benton Event Center. And if you like genealogy, there will be some sessions on Friday night, and then all day Saturday there will be 4 different sessions. And the speaker is J. Mark Lowe from Tennessee, and he will be doing 4 presentations, I can't remember. But if you want to register, you can go to Arkansas Genealogical Society, I think it's .com, and look at their website. So